This is the new iPhone 16 Pro Max and this is the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra. Which one is the best? The S24 Ultra is the world's best-selling flagship Android phone in 2024, whereas the iPhone 16 Pro Max is the best iPhone that you can buy right now. And if you remember when I compared the S24 Ultra and the iPhone 16 Pro Max last year, it was so close between the two phones, but since then the S24 Ultra has received some major updates making it more refined than ever, whereas with the iPhone 16 Pro we get some nice upgrades too, kind of. Okay, let me start the conversation with their design, and as expected, both of them are quite different in terms of their looks. The S24 Ultra has this classic boxy form factor and that clean camera setup which looks bold and classy. But one thing I often find difficult while using the S24 Ultra are these pointed corners, which means it's a little uncomfortable while playing AAA games for longer hours. Whereas the curves on the iPhone 16 Pro Max really help with an overall grip. The iPhone 16 Pro Max this time has a bigger form factor than last year. It's got a bigger 6.9-inch display, so I was expecting it to be somewhat uncomfortable, but the weight is actually more evenly distributed this time around. Now don't get me wrong, both these phones are pretty huge, but I just like the overall feel of the 16 Pro Max. The iPhone is also more robust since you get grade 5 titanium frames versus grade 2 on the S24 Ultra, so if you happen to drop these phones on concrete, chances are the 16 Pro might have fewer scuffs. Plus, Apple is claiming that their new iPhones are 2 times tougher than any other smartphone's display, and if you check the drop test conducted by PhoneBuff, you will see that the iPhone 16 Pro is more crack resistant than the S24 Ultra. But on the back, it seems that the S24 Ultra's cameras are stronger. The iPhone 16 Pro is also more water resistant than the S24 Ultra. Both are IP68 rated, but you can submerge the iPhone up to 6 meters for 30 minutes versus just 1.5 meters on the Galaxy S24 Ultra. But one thing I don't like about either of these phones is that their camera lenses can get dirty every now and then, and if you don't wipe it often before clicking pictures, you might end up getting very hazy photos. By the way, I'm also fond of the iPhone's action button, which I use more often than I expected, especially if I have to quickly set the notifications to silent whenever I enter a meeting room. However, as I said in my review of the iPhone 16 Pro Max, this new camera button is not very useful to me. Its placement is very weird and it's tedious to use, so I actually have disabled it altogether. The big plus you have with the S24 Ultra though is this S Pen, and this is something none of the other phones have, so this is a big advantage if I quickly want to take notes during meetings, and it could be quite productive for a lot of professionals, like if you are an engineer for instance and you have to write down some important stuff during field visits, or if you are an artist who likes to doodle time and again. This is a very nifty little tool to have. Okay, so how's the display on these two phones then? I think in this area Samsung is now slightly behind because Apple has two big advantages. Number one, not only it's bigger, but its bezels are super thin, even thinner than the S24 Ultra. And number two, the iPhone 16 Pro is even brighter than the S24 Ultra. In our test, we found that the iPhone 16 Pro can reach up to 1800 nits in auto brightness, whereas the S24 Ultra can only go up to 1500 nits. So generally, the iPhone has better outdoor visibility. But one thing to know is that Samsung uses this new anti-reflective coating, which means it gets less reflection if direct light is coming in. And this has been super useful for me when I am using my phone on like a bright 12 o'clock sunny day, or even indoors where there is multiple light sources. The glares are pretty much non-existent on the S24 Ultra. As for the color accuracy, I found both of these phones to be doing quite well, and HDR10+ videos are fantastic to look at on both of these smartphones as well. But if I have to nitpick, since the S24 Ultra does not support Dolby Vision playback and the iPhone does, you will notice a tiny bit of a difference while watching Dolby mastered videos on Netflix or Amazon Prime. For example, one of my favorite movies on Netflix, Into the Spider-Verse, is both brighter and has better contrast on the iPhone 16 Pro as compared to the S24 Ultra. What's disappointing though is that neither of these phones yet again have provided high PWM dimming like what Chinese flagships and even mid-range phones are offering in 2024. This means that if your eyes are sensitive to screen flickering when you're using the phone at low brightness, you might get eye strain and headaches very time and often. Now, when it comes to the haptics, both of these phones have really nice, precise, high-quality vibration feedback, and I can't really tell which is better. You will appreciate both of them when typing or navigating through the UI. Same with the speakers. Samsung is slightly louder, but iPhone has better mid-tones and vocals. Actually, both are great speakers. One area where Samsung is ahead is with the AI features. If you remember, all the cool AI features Samsung announced during the launch of the S24 series were made available on the day the S24 Ultra was available in the market, and there are also some of the new AI features Samsung has added since then, but seems like Apple is playing catch up here because most of the AI features they talked about is going to be available only later this year. And I still don't know when it's going to be available here in Asia though. This was actually a surprise because Apple announced these AI features in WWDC in June, and we all expected these AI features to roll out during the iPhone 16 launch itself. Thankfully, iOS 18 is here and it's now more like Android. I can finally customize a lot of things like we can do on Android phones. I can pause the video while recording, there is T3 dialing and a lot of other stuff. But the reason I always have an iPhone with me is that if I have to go live or post a video on Instagram stories, the quality of video does not get compressed and it's sharper than any other Android phone for that matter. As for the performance, both of these phones are wickedly fast as you would expect. The new A18 Pro on the 16 Pro Max does have significantly better CPU results, but in a real-world multitasking test I ran where I opened and closed 15 popular apps, both of these phones finished the loop at the same time. The area where the iPhone is slightly more optimized is in gaming. As you can see from this chart, the iPhone 16 Pro Max has a much better 1% low, so it's more smoother and stable than the S24 Ultra. This is the reason why all of the pro, semi-pro and even amateur PUBG players get an iPhone for gaming. It's just more optimized in general. This time around, the 16 Pro Max's thermals have also improved. Apple is still not using the vapor chamber cooling system like on the S24 Ultra, but the size of the graphite sheet is now larger, so I found it to be doing a surprisingly good job of keeping the thermals in check. Now, if you remember, last year's iPhone 15's display used to dim itself after merely 20 minutes of PUBG to prevent the phone from overheating, but that is not an issue with the 16 Pro Max. Even after one straight hour of gaming on this thing, the screen does not dim itself. The temperatures between these two phones is also really comparable. They don't overheat or throttle the performance, but one interesting thing I found is after like 40 minutes of recording 4K footage, the S24 Ultra was hotter by 2-3 degrees more than the iPhone 16 Pro Max. Even copying large video files from the phone to SSD or converting 4K 120 FPS to slow-mo is significantly faster on the iPhone. The shutter speed or switching between the camera lens is also seamless on the iPhone. It's just the small quality of things that are a little better on the iPhone 16 Pro Max. Likewise, the battery life on the 16 Pro Max is also better by 1 or 2 hours as compared to the S24 Ultra. In my typical use where I click a lot of photos and videos, play games, watch videos, I get around 7 hours of screen on time on the S24 Ultra, whereas I usually get around 8 hours on the latest 16 Pro Max. I've even gotten like 10.5 hours of screen on time on this thing, which is insane. Charging is slightly faster on the S24 Ultra since with the 65-watt PD wired charger, it can go from 0 to 67% in 30 minutes and a full 100% in 1 hour and 10 minutes, whereas the iPhone 16 Pro Max can get from 0 to 55% in 30 minutes and full 100% takes about 2 hours. The iPhone charges very slowly when it reaches the 85% mark to preserve the battery health. Okay, so I have saved the best for the last, the cameras. And in this aspect, I am surprised to see how an 8-month-old S24 Ultra competes so well against the newly launched iPhone 16 Pro Max. I think the iPhone 16 Pro Max's camera will eventually improve with an update, but right now in most daytime images, the dynamic range is better on Samsung, and the color tone in most of the photos look very pleasing on Samsung too. The iPhone's flat and warm tone does not look nice in some cases, but I have to say I like Samsung's vibrancy in most of the images. Just look at this photo I took during dawn. Samsung just looks so much pleasing. Now, I don't want you to think that Samsung is better all the time. In many ways, you will like the photos from both these phones, and weirdly, some of the photos are very identical as well, that you will not find a lot of differences except for the color tone. The iPhones consistently have been doing better over the years. When you click photos of your pet, it has better texture and fur details and such. During low light, I once again prefer Samsung's output as it's brighter, has slightly better details and has better highlight control. The iPhone on a lot of occasions, like in this photo of this Krishna temple, has this very contrasty output which might not be very pleasing to look at. The thing that I hope Samsung improves with the upcoming S25 Ultra is the night mode optimization. When I click photos in night mode, it makes the images very unnatural, which does not look very good. The iPhone 16 Pro Max has the new high-res 48-megapixel ultra-wide-angle camera, which does a slightly better job than the S24 Ultra. Unlike the primary cameras, the iPhone 16 Pro Max has better dynamic range and details and is occasionally brighter too. The iPhone 16 Pro Max's ultra-wide-angle lens can also go closer for macro shots, but here I actually like Samsung's output. Yes, the iPhone has better details, but the way Samsung pops up the images with better depth looks really pleasing to my eyes. Now, what about the portraits then? Here in the 2x mode, Samsung has this classic vibrant social media ready output, whereas the iPhone likes to keep things natural with better textures if you zoom in. It's just a matter of your preference, I would say. By the way, you can also go to the camera setting and choose different options in the photographic styles on the iPhone, but the default standard mode for me, I would say, is the safe option. Both these phones can click super 5x portraits from its periscope zoom lens too. Last time when I compared the S24 Ultra and the 15 Pro Max, the S24 Ultra was way behind, but with multiple updates Samsung has pushed, the S24 Ultra is now almost on the same level as the iPhone 16 Pro Max. In fact, the details from the S24 Ultra are better if you zoom in. The S24 Ultra once again has that vibrancy, whereas iPhone's color science is pretty flat. Also, there are three other aspects where the S24 Ultra is better than the iPhone. Number one, its zoom photos from the 5x and beyond are much better. Number two, you get an additional 3x lens, which I think is perfect focal length to take portraits. And number three, the S24 Ultra selfie has improved a lot since the September update. It just makes the skin tone appealing versus the muted and dark tone which you get on the iPhone. On the other hand, no smartphone can beat the videography prowess of the iPhone 16 Pro Max. Yes, Samsung is probably the second best video camera after the iPhone, but that's about it. The consistency it has with the exposure handling and smoothness is much better than the S24 Ultra. I will give you an example. Check out this 4K 60 FPS ultra-wide-angle sample I took at night. Samsung is just not able to pull out any details, whereas iPhone's video is much superior. Hence, with the iPhone in my pocket, I am more confident about the footage that I'm going to get. I can just click a ProRes video and edit in post, and the output is going to look very professional. The iPhone 16 Pro Max also has 4 studio quality microphones now, and with the audio mix feature, removing the background noise is so much easier and effective too. And things like 4K 120 FPS videos and cinematic, aka portrait videos, are also something that the iPhone 16 Pro Max is finer by a small margin. Okay, conclusion time, and every year I do this comparison between Samsung and iPhone, and every time these two phones are getting so much closer and closer. The iPhone has a slightly better battery backup, a better ultra-wide-angle lens, and superior videography prowess, whereas with the S24 Ultra, you're getting marginally better photos, especially if you zoom a lot. There's the S Pen for productivity and the AI features that you can use just fine. And the S24 Ultra is much cheaper these days too. I was able to get the Dubai variant at around 72,000 Indian rupees, or you can get the authorized unit during the sales at around 1.1 lakh, which is still 25% cheaper than what the iPhone 16 Pro Max retails at. Actually, I am particularly interested in the upcoming S25 Ultra launch, where we can anticipate bigger upgrades, hopefully in the battery and the ultra-wide-angle lens. And I really hope the 3x lens will come with higher resolution and autofocus, which is something the iPhone 16 Pro Max lacks. Alright everybody, that was my full in-depth comparison of the iPhone 16 Pro Max and the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra. I hope you liked the video, and if you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And which one would you go for? Do let me know in the comments below. Saying this, I'm Pratima and thank you so much for watching.